As we're closing out this church year, as I like to call it, we're closing out the school year, and our church runs by school years. Our people transition in the summer. And so we'll be saying bye to some people today, some more next week. I've already said bye to some students. But it's always a great time for us to think about our future, thinking about what God's will is for us individually, just like we see with Saul, and also as a church, what is God's will for us as we move forward. And I've been thinking about this a little bit recently. We've got three basic areas of focus in our church. Now, there's lots of ways you can outline this, but just before we go, I want to take a few minutes to talk about this as we look forward to the fall, as we look forward to the excitement about what God's doing in our community and in our church. And I just quickly would summarize our three areas of focus is we have our inward needs of our church, we have our local impact that we want to make in our community, and we have our global impact. And these are all three that we know we're focused on. Our inward needs include things like preaching and Bible study and worship through music and small groups and our Awanas and everything else we do. And much of that is also outward local impact. I mean, these things have a lot of overlap at times. So, for example, Awana reaches out to the kids. VBS reaches out to kids in our community, as well as ministering to our own needs. So there's a lot of overlap. With our global impact, that seems a little more separate, but there's also overlap. We often benefit from things we do internationally because it brings certain guest speakers here. It gets us to exposure to other things happening in the world. We grow through serving and through giving. And when we do things like take a mission trip to Lesotho, our people grow. That's why I like doing mission trips, by the way. I care about missions, but my actual real drive to take you on a mission trip is not for the people we help. Because my job as a shepherd is your spiritual growth. And I know what a difference it can make to go somewhere and spend a week serving God like this intensely. And I've seen it change people's lives. So my first priority as a pastor is your spiritual growth. So actually, even a mission trip is really our inward needs for me, but it's also our global impact. And then what we've had happen is people have come back and said, wow, that was amazing. How can we do that locally? Right when the batteries die. So, these are three things that we always want to look at and keep in balance. We want to do all of them. You don't want to be too inwardly focused that you're not making any impact in the community. At the same time, you don't want to be so outwardly focused that you're falling apart inside. What do we have to offer the world if our church doesn't have a loving culture and isn't offering Bible study and teaching and discipleship to people? Well, we have nothing to invite them to. And so we want to make sure that we're able to do all of these things, and we try to do them well. And so our local impact, we also do things like our games night, our Thanksgiving dinner, our men's retreat, which is also inward needs and local impact. So a lot of this, again, overlaps, but we're always trying to make sure that we're hitting all of these needs. One of the things I love about our church is we've always had such a loving community. And that's been since I was a kid. Like, as long as this church has been around, it's been known for the love it has. That's the most common piece of feedback I get from people that visit us. Like, when we have visiting speakers or just visitors who come and they talk to me afterwards, they say how loved they felt, how welcome they felt. And that's one of the things I so admire about our church, is we've always had such a loving and accepting culture. And that, to me, is number one thing, aside from our devotion to Christ, that God calls us to, is to love our brothers and sisters, right? Love God and love our neighbor, and specifically those in the church is where it starts. So there's a lot of wonderful things going on in our church. There's some good things happening in our community as we're seeing the economy come back. We're seeing people move here. And so while we have these three areas of focus, we also have three exciting opportunities. One of those opportunities that I'm excited about is we have John and Arlene Fast coming this summer, our interim associate pastors, because I'll be away some this summer. I'll talk about that more next week. But something that I would like to do, that we're going to be discussing a little bit more at the business meeting next week, is to bring in interim associate pastors more often. This would give us a little bit more coverage in the fall and the spring. We're going to have this apartment that's being redone, and so if we could bring them in to stay in the apartment for 3 months at a time, they come as volunteers. We can't pay them because of the visa issues, but so they just come to volunteer. They enjoy being in Norway, getting to know you all, and they offer support, whether it's helping with things like Awana or Sunday school or preaching. It's just some extra support we have. With some of the travel that I do, which I appreciate all of your support and how we've been globally minded as a church, but it would sure be nice if I didn't come back from Argentina on a Saturday and need to preach on Sunday. It'd be good for my family if I was able to have a little bit more time. And so by having somebody here, they could preach. I'm still here with you, but it allows us a little more flex. It brings in new voices, which I've talked to all the deacons and all of our leaders about this. And it's one of those things when you mention this and people go, oh, it'd be great to have some other people preaching. And I'm going, okay, that's kind of the answer I was looking for, but not really the answer I want to hear, by the way. But it is nice. We're kind of insulated in Norway. It's not like living in a big city in the U.S. where there's lots of opportunities for English language conferences and all. And so having some fresh voices, I think, could be healthy for us. And then another one, this is what I'm really excited about. So the interim associate pastors would mostly focus on those inward needs, counseling, preaching, things, helping with some of our ministries, maybe women's ministry, just wherever the needs are. Then the next one I'm really excited about, and this would be all three areas, but especially the first two, inward needs and local outreach, is that I've been talking with Rebecca Vandenbrink, who you know has been leading music today, about coming on staff. Rebecca has a master's from Regent, so she's got a seminary education, and we've been talking about how she could come on for about 20 hours a week and be offering some additional pastoral services, helping. She's already doing a lot of Bible teaching with the women, some one-on-one stuff, but there's more opportunities that we could plug her in, that she could help to maintain some of the ministries. The nice thing with Rebecca is, God willing, they're going to be here for 4 more years. So it gives us another steady hand on the ground. And many of us that have been here longer remember we've often had 2 staff, but we haven't been able to afford that. And fortunately with Rebecca, there's an opportunity here that we wouldn't have. We can't afford to bring somebody in. And so having her here would give us 2 people so that when I'm gone or whatever, there's somebody here. There's just somebody to share the burden. It gives us more of a team with the interim associates, with Rebecca and myself, a bigger team. Really, in some ways you may be thinking, is that more than we need? And it could be that we don't need all the interims and all, but it's a chance to try this, to poise ourselves as the community grows and see what happens. But it would give us a lot of great support, and it would also be a chance for Rebecca to grow, which those of you that have been here a while know my greatest joy in ministry is seeing people grow as they serve God. And so whether it's people serving in men's or women's ministry or other areas that we've seen, we have people around the world now, even on staff in other churches, who were baptized here, who grew in their ministry here. Now Rebecca's far beyond a lot of those, but this would be a great step for her to be able to really invest in herself, into the ministry, and to grow as well. So there's always it's a win-win situation. And then thirdly, the last opportunity is one for global impact, which is, many of you know, I've been working with the Missional International Church Network. I was in Hanoi with them recently in Vietnam. They're international churches that are across the 1040 window, so the Middle East and Southeast Asia. And many of these churches are in communist countries, Muslim countries, radical Hindu countries like India. So they need a lot of support and help. Most of them don't have the health that we have, don't have the structure, don't have the history. And so we've been helping these churches to be as impactful as possible in the communities that they serve in. And it's been very exciting and very different than our churches in Europe. Now, we're part of the International Baptist Convention, but that's Baptist churches. The Missional International Church Network is a whole lot of churches that are multi-denominational. And as you all know, because most of you aren't Baptist, most of our international churches today are becoming multi-denominational. They're evangelical, but they don't necessarily have a denominational affiliation, and they don't know where they can get support. And so MICN has been a network that provides support. It's the broadest, biggest international church network there is, providing support across denominations for these churches. And I've been asked to become their executive director, which is a new area of service for me with MICN. And so when that first came up, I felt kind of like Saul. I've got the donkeys. How can I can't add this in. I don't have the flexibility. And then I began to see how God was bringing things into place with the apartment, with Rebecca, and said, okay, wait a minute. It does seem like God is lining all this up and making it clear that this is His will for my next step. And so this would become a significant part of what I'm doing. The biggest difference you'd see is we'd have some interims that would help preach and give me a little bit more flex. It takes some hours off my schedule in the week. So it'd be a few Sundays in the fall and a few in the spring when they would preach, which again is great for them to use their skills and great for you. And it would give me that little bit of flex so that I could then offer greater service to MICN to helping these churches around the world. So these are our 3 exciting opportunities. We'll talk about it more at the business meeting. I've already talked to all the deacons and the ministry team leaders. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments or thoughts, talk to me, talk to one of our MTLs, and then we'll have a discussion again next week. If you want to call me during the week, see me after church at the potluck tonight. We'd love to talk more about this. I made this really quick to try to get it all in today, but something for us to be praying about and excited, because I think God's giving us some really good opportunities as a church to continue to have an impact, and that's a blessing that God chooses to use us.